Hello ladies and gentlemen, Tevaron here and welcome back to the Aether Revolt set review. This time we will be going over the blue cards of Aether Revolt. Just as a reminder, these are my opinions and raw card evaluations, having never actually played with these cards before. If you would like to check out the previous review, just click the link in the description or the small pop-up in the upper right hand corner of the video. And without further ado, let's begin. Aether Swooper. For a blue and a generic, we get a 1/2 flying Veldakan Artificer. When Aether Swooper enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. When Aether Swooper attacks, you may pay 2 energy. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. This is a card that's a bit difficult to evaluate. It seems like it could slot into the existing Thopter decks, except that it creates servos instead of Thopters. Now, I'm not sure that that is a deal breaker, but flying is a relevant ability that Thopters have and servos don't. I think it's going to take some testing to see. My gut says this is better than Aether Inspector, as it's half the cost and has evasion, but still not quite good enough. However, only time will tell. Aether-Tide Whale is 2 blue and 4 generic for a 6/4 creature, whale with flying. When Aether-Tide Whale enters the battlefield, you get 6 energy counters. You may pay 4 energy and return Aether-Tide Whale to its owner's hand. Well, Aether Squall Ancient isn't exactly a staple on Duels, but the whale does have some advantages over that card. The biggest being that it generates enough energy when it enters the battlefield to let you pay for its bounce ability immediately and have some left over. It also costs 1 mana less and is harder to kill. I'm not sure that's enough, but I do think it's worth exploring. Burrells Chief of Compliance. For a blue and a generic, we get a 1/3 legendary human wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. A 2-cost 1/3 is an awesome rate for a control deck. It blocks most early threats and lives, and has further upside. Seems pretty good. All my instants and sorceries cost 1 less? Great. When I counter a spell, I can loot? Holy crap, that's awesome. I think it's fairly obvious, though perhaps not, that the cost reduction for instants and sorcery spells are by far his most useful ability. However, all of it adds together into kind of an amazing little package. I really like Burrells. A lot, if you couldn't tell. I hope he's as good in practice as he seems on paper. Just remember, he is legendary, so don't cast the second one. Burrells Expertise is 2 blue and 3 generic, sorcery. Return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hands. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Well, the expertise cycle is ridiculous. Bounce your opponent's board and cast Glimmer of Genius, or a Planeswalker for free. Bounce 2 of your opponent's things and 1 of your own things. With it enters the battlefield trigger, then play yours again for free. Seems pretty strong. Big tempo swings incoming. Bastian Inventor. A blue and 5 generic for a 4/4 Veldakan Artificer with Improvise and Hexproof. Here again is a card that I'm having a bit of a hard time evaluating. Hexproof is awesome, and 4/4 is a decent body, but 6 mana is a lot to pay for that, yet it does have Improvise. It's complicated. My initial thoughts are either it's amazing or not very good at all, which isn't helpful, I know, but I'm just not sure on this one, folks. Sorry. Efficient Construction. 1 blue and 3 generic for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. So I guess Thopters are a thing now, yeah? Wait, what? They were already a thing? Oh, well, I guess this fits there then. Maybe, but I'm not sure that the current Thopter lists run a high enough count of actual artifacts to trigger this consistently. A lot of the Thopters in them come from non-artifact sources, and those don't trigger this. I will say that Esperzoa plus Alchemist Vial, though, pretty spicy with this. Hinterland Drake. 1 blue and 2 generic, 2/3 Drake with flying. Hinterland Drake can't block artifact creatures. Not exciting at all. Not very good at all. Moving on. Ice Over. For a blue and a generic, we get an aura, enchant artifact or creature. Enchanted permanent doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. If only it tapped the thing when it came into play. But I guess that's asking too much for a 2-mana spell in blue. I mean, it's okay. I think Aether Meltdown is probably better at this cost, though. Leave in the Dust. A blue and 3 generic instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Draw a card. Okay, I can dig this. Into the Royal saw play back in the day. This is basically that card always kicked. And Burrells says it costs 3 instead of 4. Seems decent. Mechanized Production. 2 blue and 2 generic. Enchantment, aura. Enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. Wow, this is a really cool design, and it's very important to note that it doesn't matter what you enchant with it. When you have 8 of any artifact, you win, not just the one you enchant. Being mythic, I don't think it's going to be possible to build around this in Duels, as you can only play 1. So I'm not really sure how viable it is, but a very cool card nonetheless. Metallic Rebuke. 1 blue and 2 generic with Improvise. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. If we had access to Thraben Inspector in Duels, I'd be a lot more excited about this card. I mean, it's fine, but with Inspector this is literally mana leak. Alas, 'tis not to be. In most situations, I think Spell Shrivel is probably better than this. Reverse Engineer. 2 blue and 3 generic sorcery with Improvise. Draw 3 cards. Both Tidings and Concentration saw play in their respective formats, and this card kind of falls somewhere in the middle even without taking Improvise into account. Paired with Burrells Expertise, this is a 2-mana draw 3. Could blue-white control actually be good now? My heart wants it to be so, and yet, I've been hurt so many times before. Shielded Aether Thief. A blue and a generic for a 0/4 Veldakan Rogue with Flash. Whenever Shielded Aether Thief blocks, you get an energy counter. You can tap it and pay 3 energy to draw a card. I think this card is good. Maybe very good. It's kind of a fixed Wall of Omens in a way. In a deck that generates energy reliably, he seems pretty insane. Good blocker, card draw, flash? Yeah, seems pretty good. Shipwreck Moray. A blue and 3 generic for a 0/5 fish. When Shipwreck Moray enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy counters. You may pay an energy, and Shipwreck Moray gets +2, -2 until end of turn. I mean, it's an energy maker, I guess? Otherwise, not very good. Skyship Plunderer. A blue and a generic for a 2/1 human with flying. Whenever Skyship Plunderer deals combat damage to a player, for each kind of counter on target permanent or player, give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. So I like this creature. It's important to note that energy counters are considered to be on you as the player, so it can generate energy if you already have at least 1 energy counter. Can also add loyalty to planeswalkers or +1/+1 counters to creatures. Also, a 2/1 flyer for 2 mana is a fine rate in and of itself. Take into Custody is 1 blue for an instant that taps target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. No, thank you. If I want this effect, I'll play Press for Answers and get a clue in the bargain. And instant versus sorcery, be damned. Trophy Mage. A blue and 2 generic for a 2/2 human wizard. When Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 3, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Whoa, Nelly. Be still my heart. What can you fetch with this card? Pilgrim's Eye, Filigree Familiar, Dynavolt Tower, Life Crafter's Bestiary. Lots of goodness going on with the Treasure Mage. Just remember, it does fetch an artifact with exactly converted mana cost of 3, not 3 or less. Whir of Invention. 3 blue and X, instant, with Improvise. Search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Well, I'm not completely sure, but I think this card's pretty good. It's kind of like a blue Chord of Calling. There are certainly artifacts that would be awesome to fetch up at instant speed. Planar Bridge, anyone? Windkin Raiders. For 2 blue and 4 generic, we get a 4/3 human artificer with Improvise and Flying. If you could cast this early for 2 mana with the Improvise, it seems like it could be pretty good. I'm not sure you could pull that off though. Even a bit later isn't bad. However, if the artifacts you're tapping to play her are creatures, you're slowing yourself down. Perhaps in a more controlling deck, Burrells Expertise into this doesn't seem too bad, but not terribly good either. I guess I think it's pretty medium overall. And that is the end of the blue cards coming to Magic Duels in Aether Revolt. What am I most excited about in blue? Well, coming in at number 3 is Burrell, Chief of Compliance. Number 2, Trophy Mage. And at number 1, Burrells Expertise. What are your favorites? What would you have liked to have gotten that we didn't get? Me, I'm kind of bummed that we didn't get Disallow. However, we did get a lot of really cool and unique effects in blue this time. Join me next time when we'll be looking at the black cards of Aether Revolt. And until then, friends, be excellent to each other.